So far what we've done is the rough draft of the front and the rough draft of the back. Now, some of you have done pattern making before. You should be noticing that there's still no neck curve here in the front or the back, and that's because we're going to do those when the two pattern pieces are together. We did already match up the shoulders so they're the same, and we matched up the side seams so those are the same, but we still need to finish the neck curve, and we also need to close these darts and then match up the waist all the way across. When we do all of these additional fixes to these pattern pieces, this is called truing. Now as we go through this video, eventually your patterns will look like this, where we'll have them taped together, we'll close the darts, we'll true up the waist, everything will be good to go and we'll match. Once we've got to this stage, then we're going to start balancing the armhole, and eventually we're going to make a sleeve to go inside of here. The goal is eventually we'll have the darts closed, and then we'll also tape the shoulders together, and then we can take this, put it back on our dress form, and then do a test fit here in paper right back to our dress form. Of course, if you're doing this for yourself, you could do a test fit back to yourself or to your own dress form or a client. Now, if you've learned to drape your front and back bodice, and you've done just a rough drape, at that point you'll be ready to do the exact same thing that we're going to do now, which is to start truing all of this up. The drape example that you're looking at here, I've already gone through and trued everything up on this from previous demos, but I just wanted to show you that basically where you're at with your front and back paper patterns is the same as when you got to this point in draping. And then of course, once you've trued them up, then you can start pinning your drapes together. And same thing as our paper patterns, you can use this to go to a test fit back to your dress form, your client, or yourself. So all of the rules that we're going to be using here in paper are all the same rules that you would be using here in muslin at this stage of the project. For this video, you're going to want to have your front and back draft, as well as a number 2 pencil, a green and blue color pencil, your white plastic eraser, pencil sharpener. You'll want to have your size 17 French curve, a clear ruler. This is 2 inches by 18 inches. If you need some of the correction tape, some clear tape, this is the magic tape, as well as some paper scissors. And then you're going to also want to have a bendable ruler. So these are bendy rulers for pattern making. If you don't have this, you could use your regular measuring tape. Or if you have a tape that comes in a little container and it zips in and zips out and it's a metal tape, you can use that also to bend and measure around corners and stuff. And you're also going to want to have your metal variform curve. For those of you who did this video now for the first time, all of your measurements are going to match my measurements. But when we do this truing video, I'm going to try and stay away from using measurements, because if you're watching this video for a second, third, and fourth time, at that point now you're using custom measurements and you just want to focus on truing your front and backs together. Alright, so let's get started on truing the front and back bodice. So sharpen up your number 2 pencil, take out your front draft, and what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the neck and we're going to start truing this up. Alright, so have your pattern piece where the fold is closest to your body and the top and the neck is up here. What we're going to do is the neck right here is right at the juncture of her neck in her throat area. And what we need to do is we need to drop this down 1/2 inch so it's comfortable on her. So from the neck going down towards the waist, square a line going into the pattern piece. So again, this is 1/2 inch down, square line. Then move over here to the shoulder. So this is the shoulder where it's touching at the neck. And what we're going to do is I want to square this down with the pattern piece. So I'm going to follow parallel with center front. So then you're starting to kind of get this square looking thing right here, which is basically going to be the curve for the neck. Now come over here to the shoulder. And what we're going to do is fold our paper exactly right on that shoulder. And if you've done it correctly, you should not be able to see any pencil on this side or this side because the pencil is perfect right on top of that fold. Now bring out your back. So here's the shoulder of my front. Here's the shoulder of my back. And I'm going to take my front and come over here and match it to the back. So double check yours with me right now. So again, this is the front piece. That's center front over there. This is the back piece. This is center back here. And we're matching up the shoulders. So bring your two shoulders together so the pencil lines are right on top of each other. The notches match. The green dot in the armhole matches, and the dot right here at the neck matches. And let's go ahead and tape this down, and make sure you tape it going lengthwise with the seam right here. So the length of my tape is going the length of the seam. Now that I have the shoulders taped, I'm going to pivot this. So the neck is right here, closest to me. Center back and center front is right here as well. And we're going to do the shaping here for the neck. Now here is my front neck, and we've already drawn this box going square. What we need to do is we need to continue this square line here going onto the back pattern piece. So following the grain from the front pattern piece. And just go for a short distance. The center back neck, it does not need to move down. Remember we moved the front neck down? Well, the back neck, leave it where it is. Go ahead and square that back neck into the pattern piece a little bit further. Now what we're going to do is let's concentrate on the front neck here. Taking your French curve, we're going to have the straight part of the French curve up here at the shoulder. And we're going to move this French curve, having the tighter curve part here at center front. And you want to hit this shoulder dot, as well as you want to blend into center front at the neck. And ideally, you want to have that curve start to turn into this straight line before you get to the center front. Now what I want to do is, for the back, I'm going to flip my French curve over. So again, we have the straight part of the French curve is here at the shoulder. We want to blend from this point, right here at the shoulder, and it's going to blend into center back at neck. You'll notice you get kind of a straight line for a longer distance than you did here at center front, and that is correct. Now taking a close look at this, the neck curve should be a really nice blend all the way across the shoulder and into center front and into center back. So it's really important that the curve comes down and turns into a straight line that is square with center front. So this last little bit of the curve itself becomes the straight line before it touches center front. And this is really important, and let me show you why. Take out a piece of scrap paper and fold it in half. Now if I were to start from the fold cutting away, and if I cut down at an angle, when I unfold this, it's making a V shape. So in this instance, it's a V shape cutting up and in. Now fold it and cut at an angle heading the opposite direction. And when you unfold it, now it's a V shape pointing out. Both of these would be incorrect at your center front neck. What you want is you want it to be perfectly straight across for a short distance before it starts to curve. So do this with me now. So go ahead and fold this again, and making sure that your ruler is square with the fold. So here's the fold of my paper. I'm making sure my ruler is square with that fold. So then when I cut it, it'll go perfectly straight across. It's not pointing out and it's not cutting in. So that's what you need to have here at the center front neck as well as the center back neck. Even if it's a very short distance, so for instance on the center front neck here, it's just a little tiny, like 1/4 of an inch that line is square, and that's fine. As long as there's just a little bit that's square, you're good to go. Now let's move along the shoulder out here to the armhole. And let's turn this so it's facing towards us. So at this point now, I'm looking at the armhole. Here's my back pattern piece. Here's my front pattern piece. What I want to do is, here at the shoulder, if I can, I would like to make the armhole straight as it crosses that shoulder line. Now the only time I would not make this change is if my two pieces come together and it's cutting in, and I'm trying to fix it by cutting in more, I would not do that. In this instance, it's cutting out, and what I'm going to do is just trim that point right off by making this straight. So what I'm doing is my ruler is square with the shoulder, and I'm coming down to where it's touching on the armhole curve right here and here, and then I can just trim that off. Now I already have my green color pencil on here. I have a piece of tape on top of that. So what I'll do is I'll just put some whiteout tape just right on that dot. And then again, I can line up my ruler square with the shoulder, and I'm bringing it down to where it's touching right along these armhole lines. And I can just square that up, and you can see it makes barely a change at all. This is like maybe 1/32 of an inch. And then what I'll do is I'll circle that, and then when we peel the tape off, we'll have the front and the back in place. So again, I would only do this if the armholes are starting to point outwards and I'm trimming that point off. If the armholes are pointing inwards, leave it alone, especially when you move into plus sizes or women who have a larger size bra cup. You might find that that will come to a point and you don't want to mess around with that armhole shaping. Alright, so let's carefully separate the back from the front. And then you can come in here and finish putting white out on the underside and getting your circle back in there for both the front and back shoulders. Now for me, these two locations where I put some of this whiteout tape down, I'm going to go ahead and just put another piece of magic tape right on top of that, so eventually it doesn't accidentally peel off. Or sometimes if you're pressing your pattern pieces flat with the iron, you don't want this to like accidentally stick to your iron. Okay, so get your front and back back into position. This is center front, this is center back. What we're going to work on next is now getting the curves for our waist. So you can see here, eventually we need to close the front dart, back dart, put the side seams together, and blend the waist all the way through. Let's start here with the front pattern piece. So come over to the center front and move out to the very first dart leg on your bodice. And we want to fold our pattern piece right along that dart leg from the apex all the way off the paper. Again, if you've done this correctly, you should not see pencil on this side or this side because the pencil is right on that crease. Now come over here to the bust apex. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold our pattern piece along the horizontal balance line, but you don't have to crease it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to close this dart. So we're going to have this dart leg fold over to touch the other dart leg. So it's folded along the apex and the horizontal balance line. We're closing this dart leg. And for me, I like to always start up here at the top of the dart and get that fold ready. And then I'll start working my way down the dart leg and making sure that they match down here at the bottom before I finish creasing this completely flat. Now you can see the shaping for the dart that we're doing here. What we want to do is we want to tape this so it doesn't keep opening up. Again, using your tape, going lengthwise with the dart, let's go ahead and tape this above the waist area as well as below the waist area. And then later on we're going to erase and draw in this area, so you don't want to have tape on your pencil right now. And what we're going to do is here at the side seam, we've already folded this from when we matched up our side seam to the back, but let's go ahead and get that folded from the front piece as well. Now let's take out our back piece. Get your center back closest to you. Starting from center back, come out to the very first dart leg, and we're going to fold that dart leg. So crease it from the dart tip all the way off your pattern piece. And then make sure you cannot see the pencil anymore because it's right on top of that fold. Then what we're going to do is here at the dart tip, fold your pattern piece in half, and then we can close this dart. And what I like to do is I like to start up here at the top and get that creased, and then I'll work my way down this dart, matching it up, and then I can crease it all the way off and tape this in place. Again, you want to tape it above the waistline and below the waistline. That way we can still erase some of this area. Now we can see the shaping for the back dart. Basically what this is doing is it's shaping your pattern so this is fitted in the waist but looser here underneath your arm. Let's go ahead and bring our front pattern piece over. We've already folded the side seam, so we're going to match it up to the side seam of the back. Now what I want to do to work with this pattern piece is I'm going to invert the bust dart and the back dart, and then we can get this waist here nice and flat on the tabletop. Now come up here to where it's the bottom of the armhole and the top of the side seam, and we have that straight green line here and here. So match those up, match up your side seam notch, and match up your bottom dot here. And what we're going to do is we're going to tape this in place, going lengthwise with the seam. And down here, make sure you tape it above the waist and below the waist. That way we can do some erasing in this area. Now what we want to do is we want to start working on the shaping for your pattern piece. Since I'm all done using my tape, what I like to do is put it here behind my pattern piece, and then it helps to keep this up in space, and then this will lie flatter. Now come down here to the bottom of the side seam at the waist area. And I want you to erase everything except for that green circle. At this location, what we need to do is we need to square up a line for 1/2 of an inch on both sides of this. So again, this is the side seam. I'm square with the side seam, and I'm going to go 1/2 of an inch towards the front and 1/2 of an inch towards the back. So now I know when my waist crosses over the side seam, it's not going to cut in or poke down. Now take out your variform curve, and we're going to do the shaping for the front pattern piece. Remember, have the straight edge of the curve here squared up at center front, and then we're going to slowly move the curve along until we can hit this 1/2 inch mark at the side seam and that 1/2 inch mark at the center front. This dart tip, we dropped down 3/8 and we made this location. At this point, you should ignore that. So whatever that was, just erase it and ignore it. We no longer need that information, and we want to have a nice smooth blend going from this dot out to this dot. And you can see it's straight just for 1/2 of an inch here at center front, and straight for 1/2 of an inch here at the side seam, and a curve blending the two. Now let's move over here to the back. Go ahead and square your ruler with center back. Come out straight for 1/2 of an inch, make a dot. We already have that dot here at the side seam. We're going to take our variform curve, have the straight edge of your curve here at center back, and then start moving the curve over until we can hit the straight part of the center back and the side seam. You also want to make sure that the variform curve is not going up higher than the front waist. So now at this point, stepping back from it, you should be able to see that it's a nice, smooth, even curve. It doesn't have any secondary bumps in here. And again, it's perfectly straight and square at center front. It's square here at the waist side seam, and square here at center back and the waist. Now, as you know from sewing clothes, the dart legs and down in the seam allowance, there's this pointy shape to it. What we need to do is we need to find those now, and the best time to find it is when everything is taped closed. So at this stage, if you're working on paper or muslin, you'll do the same exact thing. You'll go ahead and add your seam allowance. Now for us, I want to add 1 inch, so then when I go back and do a fitting on my dress form, I have a little bit of room to play with if I need to make adjustments. A quick way to add seam allowance is holding your ruler like this. And then you can have the tip of the ruler touching the paper, and the rest of the ruler is here up in the air. And what I'm doing is, like right now, I'm adding 1 inch seam allowance, so I have the 1 inch mark along my seam So the edge of my ruler is 1 inch. And I'm looking at the center of the ruler and I'm just drawing short lines following along the seam right here, and I'm on the outside here. Now also, while your paper is still folded, you want to cut right along that seam allowance. So again, I've cut through all layers. So now when I unfold the dart, you can see the shaping here in the seam allowance for the dart legs and the dart allowance. So let's do a little bit more work here on the back pattern piece. Now on the back pattern piece, up here on the horizontal balance line, this is where your shoulder blade is. And your shoulder blade needs some room as well as your sleeve. When you do draping for the back piece, you automatically already add in a little bit of a dart right here at the shoulder. We need to have that here on our paper patterns. So eventually the shoulder blade will have this built-in ease right here. Now for the flat pattern draft, we don't have a back shoulder dart yet, so let's go ahead and do that right now. So on your pattern piece, go ahead and locate the top of your dart tip as well as that notch at the shoulder. And what we're going to do is we're going to connect this notch down to the dart tip. Now where this line crosses over your horizontal balance line, so this is the HBL, the quarter fold, where that crosses, I want you to come out here and circle that. And we're also going to put a green dot right where they cross over. And then take a small square of tape and put it right on top of that location as well. Now where the horizontal balance line goes from this new green dot, I want you to draw a green line all the way out to the armhole ridge. And also where this is, the green dot, traveling all the way up to that center of the shoulder notch. Now, what I want you to do is turn your paper so the armhole is facing towards you, and we can see this green line right here and here. And take out your paper scissors. The first cut that we're going to do is right here along the horizontal balance line. You're going to cut all the way into that green dot. And you need to stop cutting right before you get to that dot, so you're leaving a little bit of paper on there. Then come over here to the shoulder notch, and we're also going to cut along that line all the way down to the dot. And again, you want to stop right before you get to that dot. So here I've cut from this middle of the shoulder down to that dot location, as well as the horizontal balance line out to that dot. And this piece of paper is just barely hanging on. Now take out a scrap piece of paper and let's cut out a very long triangle. And if there's dots or numbers on your paper, flip it over so it's just the blank side. And what we're going to do is we're going to slip that underneath here. And this is up in the shoulder area. And I want to tape this in place. And I'm making sure that the paper is covering all the way going down past the bottom of this dart area. And then I'm taping it here towards the center back on this side of the dart leg. Now take a look at yours. So center back should be out here far away from you. And then come in here to this first dart leg. And this is the one where we're going to add another 1/4 inch beyond it. So this is going away from center back, following along this shoulder level line. So add 1/4 inch. And circle that. Now when you're adding this 1/4 inch, that's for sizes 0 through 4. And then sizes 6 and 8, I would do 3/8 inch. And then sizes 10 and larger, I would do 1/2 inch. Now take this piece of paper that's floating, this other side of the shoulder, and bring it up to match at that 1/4 inch notch. And again, we're going to tape this in place so it doesn't move. Now let's take a look at this and make sure that we're all doing the exact same thing. So here's my center back, moving out to the neck and moving out to the first dart leg. This is the original line that we had on there. And then this puzzle piece here, we moved it out 1/4 inch going away from center back. And now that made a little dart right here, and it's closing the armhole. So this is now a slightly shorter distance. What I want to do next is this horizontal bounce line, I want to keep it as a nice clean straight line. So this extra piece of paper here, I want it to be in back, and I want the majority of my pattern piece to be here on top and in front. And then I can come in here and I'm going to tape this in place. And I want to tape on either side of the armhole just in case we need to erase and change some of this line right here. And then check up here if there's any other paper that needs to be taped down. Go ahead and take care of that right now. The next thing I want to do is the dart going from the shoulder all the way back down here to the HBL. This dart is too long. So for all dress form sizes, we're going to make this back dart 3 inches. So starting from the shoulder, following along, so let's come out here to center back, come out to the very first dart leg, and we're going to go down that dart leg 3 inches, make a dart tip and circle it. And then we need to change, so this side of the dart leg should meet right here. And then you can white out that older previous dart leg. So make sure you have where it's really clear that this is your dart leg, that's your dart tip. And down here at this older location, let's go ahead and put a squiggle through that so you know that that is no longer valid. The last thing I want to do is my horizontal bounce line, it disappeared a little bit when I cut this pencil line. So I want to come back over here to center back at the horizontal bounce line, and I want to square this out nice and dark so I know exactly where it is out here on the shoulder and armhole. Let's take a look here at the back side of our pattern piece, and there's some extra paper that you don't need, but the rest of this we need to tape it down so it does not move. And you want to use the least amount of tape possible so this pattern piece doesn't get too stiff. Later on, what we're going to do is we're going to fold this dart, and then we'll come back and we'll true up that shoulder. But for now, what I want to do is I want to finish balancing this armhole. So bring over your front pattern piece, and we have already folded it here on the side seam. Let's get that folded and put it together with your back again. So here I have it taped back together perfectly at the side seam. Everything is matching up. Now come over here to your back armhole shape and just double check to see if it changed a little bit after adding this dart. If you notice there's kind of a weird V or stair step or something going on here, go ahead and take a minute to blend that back out. Alright, so let's just talk about this for a second. Now this armhole here eventually is going to have a sleeve to match back up to this. If I'm making this bodice and it's going to be for something really simple like a Halloween costume or something I'm going to just wear once, or I don't really care how perfect it is, realistically at this point you're basically done. But for us, what we're going to do is we're trying to make master slopers that we can use and start to manipulate these and do all kinds of designs and know that it's going to fit back to ourselves every time. As well, you should be able to take these patterns and grade them. So like we're starting with size 4, you should be able to grade this down to size 0 and grade it up to size 8 or 9 or 8 or 10. And because everything is balanced, that all those sizes will fit perfectly. So it's really important in the industry that this armhole has to be balanced, and that's what we're going to do right now. Now when I do this demo, I'm going to be measuring my armhole for the front and measuring my armhole for the back, and I'm going to tell you my results. And then obviously what should happen is you should measure yours too, and I hope you have the same results. If not, you're going to need to adjust yours, and that's the balancing process for the armhole. For those of you who are doing custom, so all of your measurements are totally different from my measurements, you'll still have to go through the same process. So we're all going to do this together right now. What you're going to want is you're going to want to have your bendable ruler, or at the minimum have your measuring tape. And like I said before, if you have like a flexible metal ruler, the ones that go inside of those little automatic ruler holders, then you can use something like that as well. Now, in order for me to take these measurements, I need to see the inside edge of my ruler from the armhole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my pattern pieces upside down. So here's the back, here's the front. Now because this ruler is bendable and it can go in different directions, sometimes you'll get these weird little bumps in here. And if you're not careful, that can actually make your measurement longer than it actually is. So what I like to do is I'll put my French curve where it fit into the armhole, and then I can mold my ruler up against the edge of the French curve. So now I won't have any weird bumps on it, and then I can come in and start to take the measurement. Now for the first one, what I'm doing is, this is the armhole from the front. So I got my ruler to match the shape of my French curve. And now I come in here and I'm going to measure, starting with 0 at the shoulder. And I'm following right along the edge of my pencil line all the way down to the side seam. And now as I come along the curve, getting close to the side seam here, I want to measure this all the way down to the 1/16 of an inch. So 8.5 is 8/16. So I have 8 14/16. So let's write that down right here. 8 14/16. And measure yours and make sure you have the same result. If not, write down exactly what your result is, whatever size you're working on. So now I flip my ruler over and my French curve, and I'm matching the curve here from the back. And I can make sure I'm starting at 0 at the shoulder. I'm following perfectly right along the edge of my pencil all the way here to the side seam, and I'm getting 9 4/16. Now so far I've measured these once. For the back I have 9 4/16, and for the front I have 8 14/16. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure these again, and I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to start here at the side seam with 0 and measure out to the shoulder and see if I get a different measurement. And if so, I need to double check, triple check until I get it correct. So yeah, I've double checked everything, and I have 8 14/16 for the front armhole, 9 4/16 for the back armhole. Now for you, you already have whatever your measurements are. Even if you're following my demo perfectly, you might have a different result here just because when you're drawing and using your pencil, your measurements were slightly off or slightly different from mine. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to balance this and fix it as needed. So take out a scrap piece of paper and your ruler and your sewing ruler, and let's go ahead and draw a straight line on this paper, making sure it's longer than like 10 or 11 inches. Now we're going to use our ruler here that we use to measure our armhole. And what I want you to do is put a cross mark on here. So then we can start with 0, and we're going to measure out the shorter distance here along this line. So again, I'm going to start with 0 right here, and I'm measuring out the shorter distance, which basically was the armhole from the front. So this was the distance from 0, so let's put 0 right here. And then come all the way out to your first mark and put an F. This was your front. Now obviously the next thing I want to do is I want to come back to 0, and I want to measure out the longer one, which was my back armhole. So I'll put a mark there, and I'll label this B for back. Now the back armhole should be longer than the front, and it should be longer by 1/2 of an inch. And this is true for all sizes. Now for me, my back is short by 1/16 of an inch. So the back and the front, I need to add 1/16 more to this measurement. For you doing custom measurements, or even you following my demo, you will have a different result. Some of you, it might be already 1/2 of an inch, the back is larger, you're done. For me, I need to add a 1/16. For the rest of you doing custom work, this measurement will be all over the place. It could be an inch, it could be 3/4 of an inch, and we need it to equal 1/2. All right, let's do a little bit of some problem solving for the different results that are going to come up. So for instance, let's say you measure your front and then you measure your back, and both of them come out to be 1/2 of an inch apart. As long as the back is the longer measurement, then this is correct. You're done and your armhole is balanced. Now let's do a second variation. What if you measured your front and your back and it came out to 3/4 of an inch? So now what we need to do is we need to do some math to figure out how we can make this come down to exactly 1/2 of an inch between the two of them. So if your total came out to 3/4, we need to minus 1/2 of an inch to find out the differences 1/4. Then if we divide that by 2, we have 1/8 for the front and 1/8 for the back. So in this instance, we can add 1/8 to the front and take away 1/8 from the back, and the two of them will be 1/2 of an inch apart. And the back in this case is still longer than the front. Now let's solve for the instance if it came out to 1 inch apart. So we'll need to minus 1/2 of an inch to find out that we can divide that by 2. And now we have plus 1/4 inch for the front, minus 1/4 inch for the back. And now we're back down to 1/2 of an inch difference, and the back is still longer than the front. Now, the largest measurement that you could fix would be 1.5 inches total. If it's any larger than this, then you've made a mistake somewhere on your shoulders and your side seams. But let's go ahead and talk through the fix for this. So you would take 1.5 inches minus the 1/2 inch, and you have 1 inch left over divided by 2. We need to adjust the front and the back by 1/2 of an inch. Again, this would be the longest measurement that you could possibly fix, and always make sure that the back is longer than the front. So far, the 3 adjustments that we talked about was for anything that was larger than 1/2 of an inch. Let's talk through some adjustments if it was smaller than 1/2 an inch, or even if your front ended up being longer than your back. Let's take this for example. Let's say you measured out your front and you measured out your back, and they were both the exact same measurement. The solution for this one is actually pretty easy. Basically, all you need to do is minus 1/4 from the front, add 1/4 to the back, and now they're 1/2 of an inch apart. On a rare occasion, you might even find that your front ended up being longer than your back. Ideally, this is actually a really bad thing, and you probably made a mistake on your shoulders and your side seams, or somewhere on preparing your dress form to get it ready for taking measurements. Nonetheless, if you want, you could fix this, and then later on when you do a fitting, we'll double check everything. The solution for this is to move the front minus 1/2 of an inch and add to the back plus 1/2 of an inch. And this will put the back longer than the front, and you're exactly 1/2 of an inch away. Now, all of these adjustments are assuming that you love the placement of your side seam and the shoulder. But obviously, when you do a fitting, we can move these around a little bit. It's really tempting to come over to my pattern piece and say, hey, the back, I need a 1/16 more. And come over here to the shoulder and just add a 1/16 longer. But that messes everything up. Because remember how I had spent a lot of time getting my dress form? The side seam totally squared up, matches the shoulder. I even did one drape, checked everything. I needed to adjust my tape even a little bit more, and now I know it's perfect and dead center. So I can't just go and change the shoulder seam. As well, the side seam on mine is perfectly straight up and down. So then you're going to ask, well, if I can't add a 1/16 here at the side seam or here at the shoulder, how in the world am I going to get a 1/16 extra here out of the back? So I'm going to show you now exactly what to do, assuming that the shoulder's in the perfect location and the side seam's in the perfect location. So just watch me here for a minute and I'll show you how to do this. So what I'm going to do is, here's my pattern pieces upright. Let's focus here on the back. So I'm going to turn this a little bit towards me so I can see into my back armhole. Now in my case, the distance from my front to my back is not 1/2 an inch, it's short. So I need to add to mine. What I can do is, I can add a little bit to the curve of the back, and I can take away a little bit of the curve from the front to equal this amount. Now for me, if I'm short 1/16 total, then I can add a 32nd of an inch to the back and take away 1/32 of an inch from the front, and now they will be exactly 1/2 of an inch. So again, if I have my ruler right at 0, right at the shoulder, and it's matching perfect right along my pencil line all the way here to the side seam. If I want to make this measurement larger, what I need to do is, at the side seam, push my ruler into the pattern piece. And now I can see over here, I'm getting a longer measurement. Then if you come back and you bring your French curve into this shape, this new shape, and if you were to trace it off, you will see that you are cutting into the pattern piece and it's making it a longer distance. So then of course the same thing would be true here if you're trying to take away from the front. I could make this 0 at the shoulder. It will come down. This is my exact measurement for the front. And I want to make this measurement shorter. So if I start pushing this away from the side seam to get a shorter measurement, and I bring the French curve back into here, you'll notice that here I'm adding to the shape of the front, making this a shorter distance. So taking a closer look here, we want to add length, so we're going to trim away from the armhole. And if you want to shorten the length, then you need to add a little bit in the armhole. And in this instance, we're leaving the shoulders and the side seams exactly where they are. And I know it sounds crazy at first. It's really awkward because what I'm saying is you're going to add a little bit here to the front pattern piece and then redraw your shape, and you're going to get a shorter distance. And then you come over to the back and you're going to take away a little bit from the pattern piece, redraw your curve, and now you'll get a longer distance. But this is exactly how you do it, to come in here and finally get the front and the back to be exactly 1/2 of an inch apart. It's critical that you do that. And this is true for all sizes. Now later on, of course, when we put this together, we put the shoulders together and we put it on the dress form, you might see that the side seam is not straight up and down. And in that instance, what you can do is you'll have to straighten out the side seam, and in that instance you'll be adding a little to the back and take away from the front. So you can move the side seam around, but only once you're doing that fitting back to the dress form or back to your client. But right now on paper, if I want to make that balanced, I have to do it here somewhere in the curve of the armhole. And we'll talk about this more later on also when we're doing the shaping for the sleeve as well. So go ahead and take the time now to get your curves until they measure perfectly so the back is 1/2 of an inch longer than the front. Now for those of you who are following me exactly for the first time, if you have the same result as me, all we need to do is make the back 1/16 of an inch longer. So what we can do is, here is the back armhole curve, here's the shoulder, here's the side seam. And in the middle of the curve, so in between the quarter panel and the halfway, we can push the French curve back 1/16 of an inch. And let's just lightly erase the curve right now that we already have. Being sure to leave this little tiny dot here, which shows us 1/16 going towards the center back. And then we can redraw this curve and measure it again and make sure that now this is 9 5/16. So you may need to draw it a couple times to get it. I got it, and I have now 9 5/16. So I'm going to go ahead and change this right here in my notes. And I'm just going to make sure that all of the previous older line, I can't see it anymore, so I don't get confused by that.